exposing the propaganda and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Had a slight technical delay there. Apologies for that. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. Thanks for joining us this morning. If you are local, do be careful as you're out and about this morning. It is snowing, although being a southern state, we don't get to see a whole lot of it. The road conditions aren't too awful bad, but still do be careful. People tend to get distracted out there. Had some technical difficulties that kept us from broadcasting the last few days, but we are back up and on the air. We've got information to cover from as far back as last week, so let's try to get some of it in. First of all, hot news as of yesterday certainly was blowing up Twitter and the rest of the blogosphere. It seems that the death of Hugo Chavez has finally arrived. A lot of us were watching for it the minute we knew he was going to get cancer treatment in Cuba, the great vestige of free medical care. However, as we've discussed in the past on this show, it'll be interesting to see exactly what it is that takes place in Venezuela now. The undue influence of the Castro brothers, the power struggle from within. It'll be fun to watch, and we'll have a more in-depth discussion of that in future broadcasts. Also from last week was certainly making the water cooler discussion. An American student was punished for refusing to cite the Mexican Pledge of Allegiance. This was originally reported back on February 27th. A Texas high school student had actually filed a lawsuit against her school after her Spanish teacher allegedly gave her a failing grade for refusing to recite the Mexican Pledge of Allegiance. The lawsuit says that the McAllen Independent School District violated 15-year-old girl Brenda Bredson's constitutional rights, saying that the Supreme Court forbids teachers from compelling school children to pledge their allegiance to a country. The complaint also states that the student was not allowed to recite the American Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish in front of the class as an alternative assignment. The teacher, Reina Santos, gave her a different assignment on the independence of Mexico, to which she received 13 out of 100 points. The school district has a policy that prohibits the school from compelling students to recite the American Pledge of Allegiance or text from the Declaration of Independence if the student, as determined by the district, has a conscientious objection to the recitation. Sounds like a bunch of crap to me. Bottom line is, as far as this is concerned, if this student still made a failing grade on her additional, then the question becomes, did she do poor quality work? Or is this teacher still upset that this student refused to recite the Mexican Pledge of Allegiance? If the latter is the case, this teacher doesn't need to be disciplined. She needs to be removed from teaching, period. It's bad enough that there's a level of indoctrination that goes on in most public schools, but for this continued effort to indoctrinate southern states into a repatriation into Mexico is absolutely asinine, and something needs to be done about it. and I'm sorry, when I say southern, in this particular case, I meant southwestern states. Arizona, Texas, even big chunks of California are under this assault. Also in the news, everybody's still talking about the sinkhole in Florida. Unfortunately, as of Sunday, the wrecking crews began tearing down the Florida home. Basically, it was setting over a massive sinkhole that just appeared overnight, swallowed the gentleman whole while he was trying to sleep in his bed. His brother tried to rescue him, also got trapped in the sinkhole. He was rescued, but he was unable to get to his brother. And needless to say, our hearts go out to these folks. A lot of the neighbors have been forced to move from their neighboring homes, also due to the instability in the area. We just need to kind of keep an eye on this. The Jeff Bush family going through a terrible time through just an unprecedented act of nature. Also making news from last week, but certainly worth noting and definitely have to get this covered. The National Black Chamber of Commerce president lashed out at President Barack Hussein, the occupier, and his presidency, and its presidency's damaging impact on the African American community. He was quoted as saying, "We've got to wake up, slap ourselves and wake up." With black unemployment at 13.8% this month and above 20% for young blacks, Harry Alfred criticized African Americans and the NAACP for standing up for Obama because of their shared race, even though they're being hurt by the president's policies. And, quote, "We all know this misery, but it's something like, we've got a bad guy in the family, but protect him because he's family." Alfred added that the president is removed from the pain the black community is experiencing and doesn't understand why they're going through. In fact, he issues a lot of that pain with a smile. All right, the big news of the past week that is still making headlines is legendary media reporter Bob Woodward has been very public recently about the not-so-veiled threats from the current administration's White House. Bob Woodward was on CNN last week, and he said that a, quote, very senior person at the White House warned him in an email that he would regret doing this, quote. The same day, he has continued to slam Barack Obama over looming force cuts known as the sequester. On CNN's show with Wolf Blitzer hosting, he said that the network... Wolf Blitzer said that the network invited White House officials to debate Woodward on air, but the White House declined. Quote, "It makes me very uncomfortable to have the White House telling reporters, 'You're going to regret doing something that you believe in,'" Woodward said. Quote, "I think they're confused," he said of the White House's pushback on his reporting. The White House aide who Woodward said threatened him was Gene Sperling, the director of White House Economic Council. Also on MSNBC's Morning Joe, Woodward ripped into Obama in what has become an ongoing feud between the veteran Washington Post journalist and the White House. Woodward said that Obama is showing, quote, "a kind of madness I haven't seen in a long time for a decision not to deploy an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf because of budget cuts." The Defense Department said in early February that it would not deploy the USS Harry Truman to the Persian Gulf, citing budgetary concerns relating to the looming cuts a.k.a. Sequester. Woodward also called out Obama for what he said was moving the goalpost on the sequester issue by requesting that revenue be part of the deal to avert it. Well, not long after that Mr. Woodward came forward, Lanny Davis, who served under Bill Clinton as a special counsel to the White House, told Washington, D.C.'s WMAL on their morning show that the Obama White House had threatened the Washington Times over his column, warning that the Times would suffer limited access to the White House officials and might even have its White House credentials revoked. Davis, a centrist Democrat, is sometimes critical of the Obama administration's policies. Oh my, someone on the left who's not a complete Kool-Aid drinker. How dare they challenge the oppressor, the occupier? Don't these people know? They are part of the media, after all. At any rate, Davis said that he'd never spoken publicly about the White House until the news came out about legendary reporter Bob Woodward, and that he said he would regret insisting on the White House stories had come up with the idea of the budget sequester, when President Barack Obama is now urging Congress urgently to revoke. Basically, what the man said is, you know what, I didn't think about going public, probably because I believed there was something to the threat, something to the truth of this. But, I didn't really think about it until I saw what they were doing to Bob Woodward. It felt like now's the time to jump on the bandwagon. If the media is going to break away from the media control that the occupier is trying to instigate, and has been doing very well to this point, they've essentially turned most of the mainstream media into a propaganda machine for their purposes. And what we see here is an attempt by some folks who still remember the journalistic oath and who have some semblance of integrity, trying to stand up and break away. Unfortunately for Bob, and I understand now from Lanny Davis, they have received some backlash from other media outlets. It's funny how quickly they turn on their own. It's not much different than what we've seen with Miss Sheehan of Code Pink. How the liberal media loved her when she was attacking George W. Bush. And now she's some loon nut job who's probably from the right, since she's been protesting John Brennan. Interesting, isn't it? If you stand on a principle, no matter what principle that might be, the left isn't interested in supporting you unless that principle happens to be theirs. Very tolerant. At any rate, Davis was speaking with Larry O'Connor, who's a co-host of the morning show on WMAL, and just happens to be an editor with Breitbart News. And he said that he had never spoken publicly about the threats, but they seemed relevant after the White House told legendary reporter Bob Woodward that he would regret insisting that the White House had come up with the idea of the budget sequester in the first place. Which, of course, we all know that the occupier is now running around trying to blame all that on the Republicans and urging Congress to move urgently to revoke it. The White House, of course, not directly the occupier, but his mini-minions, have vehemently denied the claim in Woodward's book, though the claim has been in the public domain now for several months since the publication of the book, The Price of Politics. That came out in the middle of 2012. Democrats and a slew of sympathetic liberal journalists have joined